So now let me create 5 reader threads. So I will just call this get reader thread, and then I will just mark it as reader one as our first reader thread, and we will pass this read write lock, which is our very first implementation, which is new J read write lock that we have just created. And don't alt V, I will just mark it as reader one, and that's it. And I will also prefer to like use final war. Okay. So we have got our very first thread created by this get user thread method. So what it will do is that we have got runnable defined here as it will just get the counter, and it will print out what is the time and what is the reader thread name. So in that case, it will be reader one and the counter value which it has read. Okay. So let's create 5 threads as mentioned. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I will just mark it as 2, 3, 4, 5. Similarly, I will mark this as reader 1, reader 2. Okay, so reader 1, reader 2, reader 5. Okay, so we have got 5 reader threads, which would be just reading the counter variable that we have created here using this get counter method. Okay, by acquiring this read write lock dot lock read and unlock read. Now let's create 2 writer threads. Similarly, I will just use this get writer threads function that we created before, and writer one, and again I will pass this read write lock. Okay, and again Control Alt V, get this writer one. That's correct, and I will use final war again. Control D for writer 2 and mark here as writer 2. Okay, so we have got our threads created, 5 reader threads and 2 writer threads. And now let's start these threads one by one in any order. So maybe I will just use a reader one dot start first, writer one dot start, which will increment this. Similarly, I can have just use all of them. Reader, say reader 2 and 3. As you can implement whatever random way that you want. And say reader 4. Just use Control D to Alt Shift down. Okay. So we got reader 1, writer 1, then reader 2 and 3. And the writer 2 and reader 4. Okay, so just some random order. You are free to use this. Now I will just do some time to let these run. Seconds dot sleep for 1 second maybe. Okay, and after this we are going to just at the last moment we are going to have this reader 5 dot start, the 5th reader after this delay of 1 second. Because I want to ensure that once we are writing, so it means that increment should be 2, and after that, these reader thread would be random. But after this sleep, I assume that the writers should be done. I mean, it's not guaranteed, but I hope that after 1 second, because we are only writing it 2 times. So the reader 5 dot start, it should be run after this writing has been done by 1 and 2. If it's not, then it's also fine. And I will just use assert equals. I will use 2 as a counter, right? And that's it. I will use a system out, s out, and just use a marker for completion of this. Okay. So guys, let's revise what we have done so far. So we have got this, our test where we have got this counter variable, and we have got increment counter where we are using this read write lock object to first get the lock on the right lock, and then only we can increment this counter, and after that we unlock it. Similarly, we have got a get counter which will be only having the read lock and then get the counter variable and then unlock it. Now in our parameterized test case where we are going to pass this read write lock, our first implementation was with the very naive J read write lock. So we are using this get write as a method source parameterized test. So how we have defined is that we are just going to have this new J read write log object that we have created, which implements all those four methods. Once we have this, then we have got some helper methods where we can create the reader thread and the writer thread. For the reader thread, we have passed this number as lambda, which will be just incrementing it by doing this get counter method. So it will get increment whatever the value is there for the counter variable. It will get it, and then it will print some statements that which is what is the reader thread which is running right now, and what is the counter variable along with the time. Similarly, for the writer thread, which will be actually incrementing it in our increment counter method, helper method here, then it will also print out this writer thread and the time there, and so it's actually mutating this counter. Okay, so this is about this helper methods for reader and writer threads. After that, we created 5 reader threads, which each having name as reader 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and writer threads as 1 and 2 writer threads. Now we created some random order where we are going to read and write. But the idea here is that we are only using 2 writers, right? So whenever this writer1.start and writer2.start is run, but because JVM in the new JVM multi-core architecture, the compiler is free to JVM is free to like reorder this statement, all these like threads. So in that case, we don't know about which whether the reader 1 will run first or reader 4 will run first. It all depends on what is the condition there. But ultimate idea is that writer 1 and writer 2 that can only increment it to 2. That's why in our assert equals we are expecting the counter variable to be 2. But here, because this is a very simple example, so we assume that all this not correct. We can use a join method or a countdown latch. But here in this simple test case, we want to just demonstrate the read write log. In that case, we can just have a sleep of 1 second, and we assume that both writer 2 and writer 1 would have incremented the counter to 2. And that's why once we have this, after this 1 second of sleep, after this, when the reader 5 reads it, in that case, we assume that the counter should be 2. So this is all about this test case. And let's run this and see. So I just click on run button. So, okay. So test runs. It means that after that 1 second delay, 1 second sleep, it was able to read and the counter as 2. Now here is the time statement given here that, okay, the very first time it was run is at this time when writer thread was implemented. So it incremented the counter to 1. And then after this, we have got reader thread, that's why we have got counter of value of 1. After this, we have got writer thread 1, which was again incremented this counter to 2. And that's why all subsequent reads were counted to 2. And I think reader 2 came a little bit later. So that's why it's exactly the same time. So that's why you can see that how the JVM can reshuffle, all those like operations based on the threads and whatever the conditions it finds correct. But the most important thing is that after 1 second of delay from 26 to 27, as we see, the reader 5, when it runs, it's always gets counter as 2, because we assume that in that 1 second delay, that 2 writers were done correctly. And that's why our assert was good. We can run it multiple times and see, and the result should be always correct, because it's a very basic, and in that 1 second delay, it would be running correctly. So as we see that here, reader thread 5 is counter as 2. Again, so here, reader 2 ran fast, reader is 1, writer 1, whatever it can reshuffle it. When reader 1 ran at this time, at that time, the counter was 0. It means that there was no writer thread which was able to write it. So this is working as expected. And in the next video, we will cover the next topic on this, the follow-up topic about making this reentrant. So by reentrant, we will be covering all those details that for all this read and write access for the log, it should be reentrant. So see you all in the next video for the follow-up problem.